Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Laura Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Monday morning, April 25th. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and I did pop the link into there what I want to look at this week. We were looking at it last week. It's an article from .about.com, and it's a huge link, so I can't really read it out on the air, but I'll give you the actual title and how you can find it on the site. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate it. Last week was I was working on, and the week before, doing some readings from my books, and just because it was April is the National Child Abuse Awareness Month down in the United States, and I want to sort of promote that, and also just to let people know a little bit about my books and what they really are about. And so, it kind of, for a couple of reasons I did that. But in doing so, it actually, it got me back in touch with a lot of the same feelings that I felt, as a child growing up in an abusive home. It certainly did make me take a look at my inner child again, which is always there. That's that's my inner person, who I am, and who I was as a child, right? And so that's kind of why this week and last week I wanted to focus on inner child work, and I'm still working on that. So this is a process for me, right? I don't have a solution. If I did, I'd certainly offer it up. I do know what helps me out, you know what I mean? And there's lots and lots of things that have helped me out, and not just any one thing, you know what I mean? There's a combination of things has really helped me out. And so, and I talk about that on the show. But so that's what I wanted to look at this week. And so I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Thanks very much. I'm not a counselor, not a counselor or therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own shows. And I just want to be one more voice speaking out against abuse and standing up for child rights, and also for survivors to do this morning show. Really, this is my healing journey. It's not anybody else's healing journey. It's just mine. And but I'm finding information that I find helpful, and so I thought, well, if I find this helpful, maybe somebody else will too. And then in the meantime, it's my healing journey. So kind of for survivors who are on their own, who have not disclosed the abuse to anyone and just are sort of, dealing with this on their own, they might be able to find a little bit of validation here, being able to hear from somebody else who's experienced something similar or felt the same way about something that happened to them. And it's I know for me, when I read survivor stories, survivors' books, other people who have written their stories and openly talked about what happened to them as children, some of it I can relate to, some of it I can't. Yeah, because we've all been through different things, right? But it's always encouraging to me, because I think, hey, look where they've come from, and look what they've been able to do, and it's always good to see that there is hope, There's too many people out here in front of me saying, there is hope, and it's truly up to us. We do have to reach out. We do have to, and if we don't want to reach out, we have to get some help, whatever we're going to do. But it truly is our responsibility as adults to have a good life, and we have to make that for ourselves. We really can't go back and change the past. And so, in doing that, in saying that, well, how do you cope, And there's so much good information out there. I had no idea until I started searching it out, but there is a lot of good information, good help out there. And it's a matter of wanting to heal, and that's what it comes down to. I decided I was tired of living in misery. I was really tired of living in this state of depression and sadness, and I wouldn't even call it clinical depression. It was just a depression brought on by what had happened to my family, and just knowing what had happened to my family, and then trying to cope with that as an adult with nobody who really cared or even seemed to care as far as my people in my life went. There would be immediate family members and other people, as I felt very much a lack of support. Still do today from them, but I have a whole lot of good friends now, because I started reaching out. And I think that's what is really important for people to know, that there are good people out there, and, I had no idea that all these hands would be reaching back to me when I started to reach out. So, that's just the thing. It's very, very, it's very, very hard. It's a hard process. It's taken me 4 years to get where I'm at today, and that's mainly just because I've been really focusing on allowing myself to heal. And it's, instead of harboring a lot of anger and whatnot, I've been able to work through a lot of this stuff, just thinking and thinking and thinking, allowing myself to experience some of this stuff and thinking and put it in where it properly goes, And that's taken me 4 years. And I mean, a lot of people, I don't know if people are willing to devote that kind of time to something like this. If not, I can't see how a person can heal if you're not willing to do that. I couldn't do it all at once, unless I was going to just quit all my jobs and quit jobs and just go on, social assistance and just live off the government and go to therapy and go to counseling, which I really didn't want to do. And I have my sweetheart, really, he counts on me to be there for him, and I count on him to be there for me. And it just seemed silly for me to do that. He's terminally ill, and he needs me to be there for him now, right? I mean, he's dying, so it's like I thought, okay, in the meantime, I got to concentrate on myself too. I can't just worry about him and be concerned about all this other stuff, and then not be concerned about myself, because I was hurting. And so I started to do self-help, which really worked for me, but I was willing to do it, and I actually could do it. Some people are not in that position and cannot do self-help, and so you need to know what you need. And basically, in order to know what you need, you have to look inside and ask yourself these very, very simple questions. What do I need? Do I need, counseling? Do I need a therapist? Do I need group support? Do I need self-help? Whatever it is, we're all different, right? And so, myself, I realized that, hey, I can do this self-help, no problem, and just work through some of this stuff. And I wouldn't say that talking to a counselor or therapist down the road might not be a bad idea, but right now this seems to be working for me. I'm actually making progress. I don't have the same feelings that I had even 2 years ago, or even last year, or even 6 months ago, probably from doing these shows, I wouldn't doubt. It allows me to work through my stuff in half-hour manageable chunks, right? So whatever it is that you find, that you think you need, that's what you need to find out, is what you need in order to heal and move forward. And for me, it had to be kind of a slow process, because I work full-time and I'm busy, and, I only have so much time to devote to this per day. And I only really wanted to devote so much time to this per day because I used to have periods of time where I'd have intrusive memories, like intrusive flashbacks, the internal voice of listening to my mother's voice from years and years ago would just ring in my head, and this would be rather distracting, especially at work and different places like that where I wasn't able to tune it out. But over the last year, probably from doing these shows, it's allowed me to work through this stuff. So I can see where, even self-help really does help, and it does work. And it's just, I guess my example is proof to me, right, that it is working, because I don't have the same type of flashbacks. I don't have that same intrusive critical voice speaking to me all the time from my childhood. And so obviously something's working here. It's really quite interesting to see. But this whole thing about the inner child, this is very important for me. And I don't know, other people may not feel it's that important, and it may not bother other people. But me, I could see my inner child, and I could picture her inside. I'm very creative, actually, as far as that goes, creative thinking. I could picture my inner child, and I thought, I can see her in there, and I could see that she's wounded. And I had never really gotten in touch with her before. I just left her in there by herself, right? Just coping with my day-to-day life, and didn't think about, didn't even realize I did need to get in touch with her. So this particular information is from About.com, and it's from Robert Burney, and he's written a book. It's called Co-Dependence, The Dance of Wounded Souls, and this particular article comes from About.com, and you can find this on About.com, probably underneath any type of healing information. So if you just typed in Robert Burney into the search, or type in inner child healing, or type in codependence, the dance of wounded souls, it will probably bring you to this page at About.com, and that's www.about.com. So this is a whole lot of web pages here from Robert Burney, M.A., and he has we actually went through one last week, but I wanted to look at another one here, Inner Child Healing, How to Begin. It actually, he goes through and talks about this, and I think this is really quite interesting. So he says, recovery involves bringing to consciousness those beliefs and attitudes in our subconscious that are causing our dysfunctional reactions, so that we can reprogram our ego defenses to allow us to live a healthy, fulfilling life instead of just surviving, so that we can own our power to make choices for ourselves about our beliefs and values instead of unconsciously reacting to the old tapes Recovery is consciousness raising. It is enlightenment, bringing the dysfunctional attitudes and beliefs out of the darkness of our subconscious into the light of consciousness. So there's a couple of websites that I've been looking at recently that talk a whole lot about consciousness and whatnot. I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian, so I don't really I just pay attention to what's in the Bible, but I can see what they're talking about here, and I also can understand what they mean by that. It's looking inside our very soul, our very spirit, our very selves, and getting a hold of what's in there that we really need to change, and then working on it. Our beliefs, our belief systems, our values, and that's that whole belief systems. People say, well, what's that? Well, that's anything that would cause you to think that, oh, I'm just not worth it. So many survivors around say, I've heard this from people. I mean, I myself have thought it, but I would never ever say that to anybody. No, and that's the truth. I mean, I've thought that many times. Oh, I'm not going to cut it. I'm not going to make it. I'm not worth anything. I've thought that and thought that as a child, right? Not just as an adult. But I wouldn't usually go around telling people that, right? I usually would go around telling people, no, we can do it, right? The sound of positive stuff would come out of my mouth because I was so used to trying to bolster my family up. My family was suicidal, right? So people would be talking about killing themselves in the living room or in the kitchen, not together, by themselves. I'm just going to kill myself. I'll kill myself, and I have to be listening to this on a regular basis, right? And I'd be like, oh, no, don't kill yourself. It'll be all right, So I was kind of the voice of, trying to keep the family bolstered up, right? I was the last child born, and it just seemed like the thing to do. I took that role on because I could see that my family was suffering because of what we were going through. And that's just the way I chose to handle it. I wanted to be the one to try to make things okay, and no, it'll be okay. So I've been doing that my whole life, actually. The world could be falling around me, and I'm the one going, oh, it's okay, right? Whereas most people would be going, no, it's not okay. It's not okay that the world is falling apart around you. And I'd be like, no, it's fine. But that's that programming. That's that programming of not giving up or not giving in to the reality of what's going on around me. So what it does is I could have the world falling around me, and I could just sit there and not get any help because I'm going to say, oh, no, it's okay, right? Instead of reaching out and getting some help or whatever. That kind of, it works good in one sense, but in another sense, not so good, right? And so, we have that's that whole inner voice that would say, I'm not worth anything. I'm just useless, or if I'm just ugly, or I'm stupid, or anything that we've been told in the past, right, by whoever it was that hurt us. And this is what we would start to believe if we actually fell for it and believed it as a child, which many times we do as children because we can't help it. We're just accepting what people say as children, and then you grow up later as an adult, and you might still be carrying some of this, self-worthlessness stuff with you, right? So, and low self-esteem. And a lot of people have low self-esteem, not just people who were abused, right? I mean, people in society have low self-esteem, throughout society. Lots and lots of people do, and may have grown up in perfectly good homes where people were supportive. So it's just it's an attitude or a belief system that we take on, and so we have to change that. And in order to do that, we have to be able to see it. So we have to be able to get inside of our minds, get inside of our like you're saying, really, when they're talking about spirituality here. But even if you're, if you're not thinking about that, just by going back and taking a look at what happened to you as a child, many times when I'm talking about this stuff, I'll just say, well, when I was a child, like my parents my dad would say that I was the devil and I was the demon seed and all this, and I'd be like, I am not, As a child, I didn't believe that, that's for sure. I believed my dad was the devil, actually. I thought he was the devil because he was really quite evil. And, he would be telling me I was the devil. I'm like, I don't think so, buddy. If there's a devil around here, it's you. And I listened to my mother say this quite a bit. So, see, my mom, I kind of got that from my mom. I didn't come up with that on my own. My mother would tell my dad that. So then I started to tell him that, too. And so this was the dysfunction in our home, you know what I mean? It wasn't like, hi, dear, how was your day? It was like, you're the devil and you're evil. And, we didn't have any normal conversations, right? It was all about killing ourselves, killing somebody, beating on somebody, hurting somebody, sexually using somebody, or, we're all the devil, demon seed, we need to die, right? So that's why 2 of my brothers killed themselves. And so many years later, people would say, well, why didn't they just reach out and get some help? Well, who knows, right? They weren't able to do it. And that's very, very sad, And then I got 2 of my other siblings in denial, right? So, it's just like, whatever. Okay, we all grew up in the same home, so we all know that you know what's going on, too. But they don't want to face it. They don't want to deal with it. Maybe it's the only way they can live. I'm not sure. The only way I could live was to actually face it and deal with it. And because it was killing me to keep that inside, I really had to get that out and had to realize that was so dysfunctional and so incredibly wrong to do to a child, to have a child grow up in a situation like that. And so the shame lies with my parents, right, not with me. But it says, on an emotional level, the dance of recovery is owning and honoring the emotional wounds so that we can release the grief energy, the pain, rage, terror, and shame that is driving us. So this is what he's talking about here, Robert Burney, M.A. And, it's an interesting way to look at it. Like, I know I've done some other work on some other healing. As far as inner child work goes, there's Hope for Us. And Hope for Us has a website, a web page, actually, whole number of web pages devoted to the inner child and toxic shame and whatnot. And Hope for Us, it's hope and the number 4, right? Not spelled out 4. It's hope the number 4 us .com. That's some great, interesting stuff too about inner child work and inner child healing. So he's saying, on an emotional level, the dance of recovery is owning and honoring the emotional wounds, so that we can release the grief energy, the pain, rage, terror, and shame that is driving us. I know for me that's not what happened for me. Like, I read this, I'm not stupid. Like, I'm quite intelligent. So, like, for me, I don't just read this and go, oh yeah, it's like, no. I have a certain set of feelings about things and a certain set of understanding about things. And for me, I didn't want to own this stuff because it was, I figure, why should I own something that caused me grief and pain? That's like keeping a car forever, even though it's broken down, but you're going to keep it because and leave it in the garage when your perfectly good car is parked out in the bloody driveway, and you're just going to keep this car around because you think you need to, right? Because you got to own everything. It's like, no. I don't agree with this, but I'm willing to read it out and check it out. Like, I'm willing to check everything out. I just don't agree with that because, to me, it's like saying, okay, owning and honoring. I don't think there's anything to honor about emotional wounding. I don't think it's honorable to emotionally wound anybody. So where's the honor in owning the pain and the suffering? For me, I like to own the good parts of myself and change the bad parts. And then once that's all changed around, then I can own my whole self. I don't really. Like, for me, in my mind doesn't work the way that this guy does, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have an appreciation for that type of a healing journey, you know what I mean? Like, it's like I know people are doing it, I own the pain, I own the suffering. It's like, no, I don't. That was not mine, So I think a little bit differently probably than a lot of people do. And it might just be because I'm a free spirit. I don't just go along with something because I read it, or I don't just do something because I see it, or, you know what I mean? Like, I think things out very carefully. So, but for some people, that might make very good sense, right? Like, for some people, they may feel that that's what they need to do. And, hey, it's whatever we need to do, right? That's the whole issue. What's good for me may not work for somebody else. So that's where this comes in really handy, because I don't agree with everything I read or see. I think that there's an awesome workbook called the Survivor to Thriver Manual. It's off of the Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, the Morris Center Programs website. That's www.ascasupport.org, ASCASUPPORT.org. And that's a great website, great workbook, Survivor to Thriver Manual. It's free. Anybody who wants to download it or just to read it offline or online. That thing is it's over 100 pages long. And it's a huge survivor workbook, right? And it's a great workbook. But they do talk a lot about that in there. And they said, what works for somebody may not work for somebody else, because we're all different. We all see things differently. Like, somebody might see this article and be like, yes, that's what I need to do. And they would feel it inside, and they'd be like, that is exactly what I need, right? And so that's why there's no shame in being different, right? People think, oh, well, how come I'm feeling at the same rate as somebody else, and that's just, we can't, right? We're all our own people, moving in our own path, at our own time levels, and and sometimes people heal faster than other people for whatever reason, and sometimes people need more time in certain areas, We're all different. And so what works for one person may not work for another, and what might help somebody else heal may not help another person heal. And I think that's very important to realize. We're not all the same, haven't gone through the same things. So it's all going to be different for all of us. But somebody else might get something out of that by owning and honoring the emotional wounding, like in the emotional wounds, so we can release the grief energy. What I did, this is kind of a good example, is in order to release that grief energy, the pain, the rage, the terror, and the shame that was driving me, I actually disowned it. I did the opposite. I just said, no, that stuff does not belong to me. That pain and that misery, that sorrow, that grief, that horror, and the abuse that was put on me does not even belong to me. Like, that was just done to me. Why should I have to own that, carry that around? So I took this imaginary necklace. I was talking about this last week. I had this imaginary necklace full of this stuff around my neck, and it was weighing me down. Basically, I could imagine that this was how I was feeling, right? And so I just took this necklace off and I threw it away, and I just tossed it away. I was like, it's gone. I mean, it's so far gone. There's no way I could ever retrieve it again, and that made me feel a lot better. So for some people, depending on what your needs are and how you perceive things, because we all think differently, we all think and feel differently. So for me, that's how I did it. So there's two different kind of ideas for people, as far as kind of whether we're going to own or whether we're going to disown all that stuff. I know that I refuse to pick that up again. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going back there. I'm not going to own any of that. That's not mine. And that people might say that's denial. No, the abuse that happened to me, obviously, the wounding, it happened, right? But as far as owning it, I mean, to me, it's like, no, I'd rather own myself as a whole person. You know what I mean? So, I guess what they're saying is we have to accept ourselves as we are, that wounded child, that, the person within us that was so wounded. I mean, I'm trying to make sense of what he's saying here. And for me, to a certain extent, that's true, because I have to accept my inner child, and I don't think she's ugly, and I don't think she's bad because she's upset because she was mistreated, you know what I mean, and was having such a hard time as a child. That's my inner child. Obviously, I care very much for my inner self. And so I've learned to love myself. I had to learn to do that because I really didn't for a long time. And that little wounded person within me, obviously, I feel for her. You know what I mean? Like, I acknowledge that she's there. Acknowledge that she needs love and care and attention. So it's not like I'm denying the whole issue by saying, okay, I just don't want to own this stuff. The fact is I know there's wholeness. I know there's wholeness. And I know that I'm very, very close to it. And so for me to pick up and own that garbage and that shame and that wounding just doesn't make any sense to me, because I've already come this far in my healing journey, and I'd rather own myself as a whole self, a whole and healed self. So basically, I'm working to perfection, which will never happen because there's no perfect thing on this planet. But in my mind, I'm a Christian, so hey, you go. But I mean, somebody else might feel there is something perfect, but I'm working towards that wholeness, that healing. And so when I believe that as I heal, I'm owning the parts of me that have come around and done the work and are feeling like they should have from the very beginning. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of allowing myself to go through and do the reversal process from the abuse to feeling good, because I didn't grow up feeling good and then be abused and then feel good again. I grew up being abused from day zero to whatever, so I've never really ever known anything other than abuse. Right? I've never known anything other than hatred and misery and suffering, right? And that's the whole issue. People are like, I don't even know how you could survive in a situation like that. Well, so many people do, and so many people thrive at, they're abused and they make it, So there's too many survivors in front of us that say absolutely that's the truth. Because I know that there's people out there that they grew up with a whole lot worse than I did. You know what I mean? So it's I think there's fighters, and then there's people that just give in. My two of my brothers they just quit. They just gave in. I mean, I can look at it and I can say, well, I understand why. I mean, I do, because I grew up in the same home they did, and I can see why they killed themselves. You know what I mean? And then, back in my mind, I can see why I was doing what I was doing as far as, wanting to end my life and planning my suicides and stuff. I could totally see it. But in the meantime, I also see what it took for me to survive as long as I did, and that I'm a fighter, obviously, or I wouldn't be here. And so, that's the whole issue. I mean, I can recognize this stuff, and I can say, well, okay, the what's it going to take to get me to the next step? What's it going to take to get me to the next step, to the next place of healing, to the next place of where I can feel comfortable about myself, where I can feel good about myself. And I've done a lot of self-nurturing, let me tell you that. I've spent the last 4 years doing that. That's probably why I'm as far along as I am, because I allow myself to do it. As soon as a negative thought comes in my head, like, oh, I'm just not going to make it, or I'm just worthless, I just change it around. I'm like, no, you're not going back there. You do count, you do matter. So I basically have had to retrain my mind, you know what I mean? And it does take time and it takes effort. I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't spend a whole lot of time doing anything other than just what I'm doing, advocating against child abuse, standing up. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dream Catchers for Abused Children, and we work all the time. We're just working all the time to stop child abuse. And not only that, I work a full-time job, and I have a sweetheart who's terminally ill. So, there you go. I don't have a whole lot of time. But during the day, through the day, when these thoughts will pop into my head, I just push them down. I'm like, you're not going back to that. You know that that's not true. Basically, I painted I had to go and look at it myself differently. I had to paint a different picture of myself on the inside of myself and see myself differently in order to move past all that, oh, I'm worthless, or I'm just no good, or I was just a bad kid, and this kind of stuff, because I know that wasn't true. Like, none of that was true. So there's a bit of spirituality for you, what's true and what's not true, you know what I mean? Like, truth is truth, and I knew that I was a good kid and that I didn't deserve to be treated that way, and that it wasn't worthless, and that I wasn't stupid, and I wasn't ugly. And even my siblings were telling me this stuff. So not only did I have to listen to this from my parents, I had siblings telling me all this. So I just rubbed it in, it's like, yeah, okay. Then I had nephews telling me this. I had other people telling me this. I had the world was basically saying, we don't accept you. You're ugly. You're this, you're that. And in order for me to stay alive, and be able to function on any level, I had to be a bit of a fighter. So then I developed a bad attitude, So it's like, they pushed me to behave the way that I did. They pushed me to behave what most people would say badly, right? They turned me into this evil, hateful, actually, truthfully, evil, hateful person, right? I used to try to have good thoughts, but most of my thoughts were actually really, really bad. And, I had to really work on changing that around. And I started doing that in my 20s. But, it's taken me 20 years to get where I was. I was still planning my suicide, and that was 4 years ago. And so, 4 years ago, I said, enough is enough, man. How long am I going to allow myself to stew in this? How long am I going to allow myself to let this abuse and this garbage that's put on me, how long am I going to allow this to take precedence in my life? When am I going to wake up and realize that it's up to me, If I want to have a good life, man, I'm going to have to change my thoughts. I'm going to have to change my mind. I'm going to have to change my inner programming. I'm going to have to change everything. So as I started to doing this work, this healing journey, and I started looking into all this stuff and all these web pages and websites and survivor books and everything else, I started to realize that, wow, it ultimately is up to me how I want to live the rest of my life. And if I want to suffer and allow this to kill me with the abuse, then that's really my choice. It is my choice to get help in whatever way it is that we need to get help. So very, very important, to find out what you need, find out what's going to work for you, and then go for it. You know what I mean? For me, it was self-help was fine. Plus, I'm not really on my own. I have a lot of support from friends, and I have a lot of friends and I would consider them family. I don't have any family supporting me, period. But I do have a lot of friends who I would say are my family, and they've been helping me get through this, right? So it's been awesome, and that's the thing. I'm not really on my own. And it's very, very helpful to have these people in my life supporting me and just they're there for me. That's all there is to it. I could be having the worst day and I know they're going to be there for me. You know what I mean? Or I could be having the best day and they're there for me, right? So it's nice to have good people in your life. So I hope that, if you, by reaching out, you do have to be careful, who you trust, because you can't trust everybody and you almost can't trust anybody. But, you have to allow yourself to open up and to allow good people in your life, So that's the thing. Make sure you do reach out and get some help no matter what it is. We'll continue this on tomorrow. I want to take another look at this, and there's some really great information here. We're just getting started. So have a great day, everybody. Take good care of yourselves. I'll be back on tonight on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio as well as my show here. So we'll talk to you all later. Take good care. Bye-bye.